Can you tell which of these two cameras is the GoPro Hero 10 and which of them is the DJI Action 2? And if you can't tell, maybe quality of camera isn't so much what matters, but really it's more about the form factor of these two cameras. That might be what we're talking about today. All right, today is the big one. Today is the GoPro Hero 10 versus the DJI Action 2, and it's kind of for the throne of king of action cameras for 2021. And today we're gonna go through both of these cameras kind of side by side, look at some footage side by side here, some audio side by side. But by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you which of these two cameras I think you should buy. And I wanted to wait until I really play with these a lot side by side to make that choice, because I've been back and forth. I've been a bit on the fence between these two cameras of which I would recommend to somebody that said, hey, I'm looking to get like the best action camera out there. Which one do I go get? Before we jump into it though, hit that like button today. It helps me a ton. It's a really easy, free way that you can just say, hey, thanks for making this video. Like button. Yeah, YouTube really cares about, they don't care about the dislike button. Clearly, since they took away the number, you can't see that anymore, but they do care about the like button. So hit that like button. Thank you. And a massive thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Anker. We're gonna talk about them in a little bit, and it does relate to one of these two cameras. And the very first thing we're gonna lead with today is pricing, because there's actually a pretty big price discrepancy between these two. The GoPro Hero 10 is $449, but if you do the subscription model with them, it's $349. So $349 for this guy, and over here with the screen combo, which would be the equivalent to this camera, having a front screen and a rear screen, you add that on there, this guy right here is $519. So between the two of them, there's a $170 price gap that this guy has to overcome. Is the Action 2 $170 more better? More better. Is it $170 better than the GoPro Hero 10? That's a steep hill to climb. Next up though, let's look at the actual two cameras side by side, and the GoPro is significantly heavier at 151 grams with battery inside there. This guy it's fairly weighty. Then for the Action 2, there's obviously two different weights on there. There's just this guy all by itself, just that camera mod, built-in battery, built-in memory. And this little guy only weighs 57 grams. So if you're doing something like a lot of POV shots, or maybe you're doing FPV drone shots, 57 grams, that is gonna be super, super helpful. It's not as light as something like the Go 2 at 27 grams, but that's kind of where they were aiming. They were aiming to say, hey, you could break this thing down and have a really lightweight version of our camera, because together it's 118 grams. And honestly, the difference between the two it doesn't feel like 30 grams. Now comparing their size, it's a little tricky, and this actually might be important for how you're gonna use your camera, how you're gonna mount your camera, but the GoPro is, like a normal GoPro. It's horizontal, it's landscape layout, while the Action 2 it's vertical. You shoot it like this. It has to be mounted like this to shoot a landscape video. If you mount it sideways, which is hard anyways to do because the magnetic mount's on the bottom, if you mount it sideways, you will shoot a vertical video, again, unless you're in that 2.7K horizon steady mode, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here. But definitely on how you're gonna mount the camera, that could matter. Let's get them both powered on real quick so I can show you the difference in screen. So the GoPro obviously has the small front screen, which I was so excited when they finally added that on the Hero 9. It has that large rear screen. Now that large rear screen, super useful for changing settings, for diving through the menus, things like that, even for reviewing your footage when you wanna watch back a clip and see like, how did that look? That large rear screen is super helpful. Now the Action 2, because of this whole modular design, the main camera unit has a small screen on there, and the screen mod also has a small screen on there. Now they're both touchscreen. You can do all settings. You can do everything on both screens. It doesn't matter which screen you're on, all the same settings and functionality is available, but they are very small. It just kind of limits you when you go and you start actually touching the screen. You're actually going into menus and trying to dial things in. It's a lot less space to work with. Okay, now though, to the big difference between these two is obviously the Action 2 is modular. Now this whole system, go watch that video on my first look at this camera as I walk through everything. But again, essentially this has a built-in memory and built-in battery into this little guy. And then this screen mod here is an additional battery and front screen. So you buy this thing for, I think it's $169 or $175, and then you have an extra battery pack essentially for this little guy. So when the battery runs out on this, you could put this on there, or you could just run around with this all together. It will burn through this battery first and then move over to this battery. But then when both are empty, you need to pop this bad boy off and either swap it for another power mod, which is $75, which means you don't have a front screen anymore, or you pop this off and you have more of these laying around, which are $169 each. So once the battery's dead, you're kind of out of luck. Whereas with the GoPro, I got lots of batteries for the GoPro. I go out with 1 battery in the camera, 4 more in my pocket. I'm filming all day with this GoPro, no problem. I have no stress or no concern on me that my battery is going to run out. I have plenty of them. And then you can buy like the rip-off version of these for stupid cheap on Amazon. Whereas again, with this guy, when the battery dies on both of them, for me, because I don't have any more power mods or any more screen mods, it's just dead and I have to recharge it, which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Anker. And this guy, all during my testing of these 2 cameras, I was out with this thing in the van, and between testing or while I was kind of going from location to location, I would be plugging this thing in so that this guy would charge this back up so I wouldn't have to worry when I got to the next spot. Is the battery gonna die on me at some point soon? I hope not. And I think I have almost every version of this Anker battery pack now. I have the 100 watt-hour version, I have the 800 watt-hour version, and now this guy, the Anker 521, is 256 watt-hours, which is a lot. Just this little power station out on some kind of adventure, you're gonna go camping or something like that, this guy will recharge your iPhone 20 times, or recharge a MacBook Air 4 to 5 times, which is a ton of 256 watt-hours. It's a lot of power in this little bad boy, and there's a whole bunch of ports and outlets on this thing. 2 AC ports, 2 USB-A ports, a USB-C port, and a car socket on there. And you can be using all ports at the same time, so you can simultaneously charge up to 6 devices just with this little thing that you have in the back of your car or van or whatever kind of adventure you're going on. And one little clever bit on here is the power saving mode. You can flip over to power saving mode, and once this thing charges your device to full, it will stop. It won't continuously trickle charge them. And then if you want them to trickle charge, like maybe you're shooting like a long time lapse and you want to hook this thing up to your camera to shoot that time lapse, and you just want to make sure that your camera never dies, you can turn that off and it will charge it up, and then it will continuously feed it power throughout the night or however long you're doing your time lapse. Go check out Anker. Again, thank you Anker for sponsoring this, and thank you for this little power pack, because this is going to live in the van. Okay, last thing before we get to our side-by-side footage comparison and audio comparison, and this is one that I don't think I mentioned the first time that I looked at this guy, but one of the really cool things that the very first Osmo Action introduced, this guy, this little tiny guy that was just amazing. It had a removable lens. Oh, by the way, this doesn't have a removable lens cover. Obviously the Obviously the Hero 10 has a removable lens cover. This guy doesn't. If you scratch or ding this glass, you are sending this back to DJI to get repaired. But one of the things that this introduced was custom presets, and GoPro copied it with their next GoPro. GoPro has custom presets now. I go into my video mode, I have all these different presets for different things that I'm gonna do. I have my standard, I have travel, which is 5.3K 60, I have my POV, which is 4K 60 super view. I have all these settings, and when I want to switch a bunch of settings all at once, I just go dink, now I'm in that mode. Tap it again, go up here, dink, now I'm in that. They got rid of presets on the Action. The Action 2 does not have customizable presets. So when you want to change like 5 different things, you are going to go into the settings, you're going to start tapping on this, you're going to tap, you've got to go change all those things. If you want to change, oh, I want 4K at 60, or now I want slow-mo, I want to go 1080 at 240. You have to go and you have to tap all those things individually. I don't understand why the company that invented presets got rid of presets. Seems crazy to me. Okay, video comparison. Let's actually just look at the quality of these 2 cameras. How do they look side by side? Here is 5.3K at 24 frames a second on the GoPro Hero 10 and 4K at 24 frames a second on the DJI Action 2. Now, obviously the GoPro is on a higher resolution, but can you tell the difference? Especially if you're looking at this on your phone right now, if you are watching this video on your phone, can you tell the difference between 5.3K and 4K? Probably not. I would guess even on a 4K monitor, I would struggle to tell the difference in quality of image. And I'll just cycle through a bunch of clips here so that you can see that when you compare these two cameras, it's really not on the video quality. Not a lot is different between the two. I think on the Action 2, it seems like the sky is a little darker, the blues are a little bit darker. Then on the GoPro, it doesn't seem like there's more dynamic range, but it does seem like it retains shadow detail better. Like the shadows are a little brighter on the GoPro than on the Action 2. But not looking at them side by side, if you just saw one or the other, not right next to the other one, you would just say, wow, those both look really good. And it's the same story for slow motion. On the Action 2, it can go up to 4K, 120 frames a second. And on the Hero 10, it can do 5.3K at 60 and then 4K at 120 frames a second also. So the slow-mo side-by-sides are also gonna be really similar. There's again, not a huge difference in the quality of image coming out of these two cameras. At least not enough that I would say that's why you should choose one or the other. Then the same thing can be said for stabilization. Here's both cameras with their stabilization turned off. I'm running, so you can see how ridiculously shaky this footage should be. That's what it should look like. And then here is both of their stabilization systems turned on. On the GoPro, we've got that Hyper Smooth 4.0, and on the Action 2, Rocksteady 2. And again, they both look ridiculously good. When you look at Hyper Smooth or Rocksteady, the stabilization that these cameras are doing these days, it's bananas. It doesn't make any sense to me, and there's no reason that you need a gimbal for your action. If someone tries to sell you a gimbal for your GoPro, don't buy it. Put one of these cameras on a pole, hold it out in front of you, and it will look like you are on a gimbal. Next up with that though, there is one thing that is different on how these two stabilize, and it's that horizon steady mode. This is one of the things that the Action 2 can do that the Hero 10 also kinda can do. So the Action 2 right now is in 4K, 24 frames a second. The GoPro's in 5.3K, 24 frames a second. And the GoPro has the max lens. Now the GoPro 10, when released, could not use the max lens. It was not compatible. The new beta firmware that you have to download manually is out. You can download it and start using the max lens with your Hero 10. So I'm gonna pop this guy on here. And over here on the Action 2, I'm gonna flip it down to 2.7K so that we can do the stabilization where the horizon stays steady, even though I do that. So here are the two cameras in their horizon steady modes. Now the GoPro Hero 10 uses that max lens mod to pop on there, and you can see that it keeps things very, very wide, while the Action 2, it crops in. So you go down 2.7K and it crops in quite a bit, but now both of these cameras can keep the horizon right side up, even though my hand is going all the way upside down, and the horizon stays perfectly flat on both. How do they compare to each other? How well, like if I flip it super quick, do they both keep up really well? The Action 2 is cropped in so much more. Look how wide this GoPro shot is. It's why the max lens mod is by far my favorite mod or favorite accessory for GoPros. So really it's just two different ways of doing horizon steady. With this guy, it's gonna crop in a lot. You're gonna have a much more cropped in image. Now you have horizon steady. With this guy, they added a lens and then they added software to understand that lens. And then you have full 360 horizon level. I think the same can be said about audio. Audio is pretty similar on both cameras. Here's an audio test right now. The Action 2 does not have its front screen on it. It's only that one microphone, while the GoPro has all of its microphones at all times, of course. How does the audio sound between these two cameras? It's not super windy at the beach right now, but there's obviously still wave noise and, you know, just the beach. The beach is loud. All right, now here is both cameras. The DJI Action 2 now has that front screen on it, which means it has additional microphones. 4 in total. All right, now here is both cameras. The DJI Action 2 now has that front screen on it, which means it has additional microphones. 4 in total. Again, similar, and if you heard just one of them, you would say, that's pretty good for an action camera. Hearing them side by side, you might have a preference, one or the other, but I would say that they both do a really good job for action cameras, which in general don't do great with audio. So image quality, audio quality, stabilization, all not really reasons to choose one camera or the other. Again, I really think this whole comparison is about the form factor. The form factor of these two cameras, the fact that these guys went with that modular design. When I look at this camera, I think, wow, that is super clever. It's really thought out. But for me, and this is where I decide which of these two cameras I would buy, I won't say which camera you should buy. I'll just say, here's which camera I would buy if I was looking at the market saying, which of these two cameras should I pick up? To me, this was kind of designed in a lab, or it was designed in an office. It wasn't taken out into the real world and used like an action camera is used, especially not by people that would be considered more power users. I would consider myself a power user. If I'm gonna go out with a GoPro on a day, I might burn through 3 or 4 batteries on a full day. If I'm really filming a ton, if I'm using higher frame rates, I might go through a lot of batteries. And that fact alone is why if I go out for a long day adventure, I won't be grabbing this camera. This camera is really clever for POV stuff. I really like that it breaks down like that. It does only have 22 gigabytes of internal storage and not a ton of internal battery. It doesn't have a replaceable lens cover, but that is clever. I like the idea of being able to have a very small piece like that with me that I can film really high quality footage on. The problem for me though, it's really just the internal battery life with even the 2 of them. It's not enough for me for a full day of shooting. Oh, and then the last thing for me is that, again, and I've talked about it in both other videos that I made about this camera, these pieces are not waterproof. So this camera, in my mind, how I would use it is not waterproof. This piece alone is waterproof, but if I was gonna go out surfing, I don't have enough memory or battery life in there to do like even a full surf session. So you put these two together, now it's not waterproof and now I can't take it surfing. The GoPro obviously is always waterproof, has a swappable SD card, swappable battery. While it's the bigger, non-modular, maybe less clever camera, for me and my use case for how I use action cameras, the GoPro is still the best action camera out there right now. And by best action camera, I just mean best action camera for like a power user that's filming normally. If you're looking at 360 or anything like that, I would go with the One X2, which is still my favorite action camera, but is just a normal shooting camera, normal shooting action camera, specs and form factor. This guy is it for me. But I wanna know what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments of these two cameras, which would you go for? But also let me know your use case, because I think that's really important. Like I said, form factor is probably the biggest reason that you would choose one camera over the other in this situation here, because again, the quality is amazing on both cameras. The stabilization is great, the audio, they've both reached like peak action camera quality. They just chose two very different form factors. I really want to do a test of the original Osmo Action, the original Osmo Action versus the Action 2. Do you guys want to see this test? Also, let me know down in the comments, and I will do that test for you guys. All right, go check out Anker. Again, thank you Anker for sponsoring this, and thank you for this little power pack, because this is going to live in the van. All right, I'll see you guys soon. I just realized that 4K 120, the DJI's front screen, like the mod, it doesn't show what you're filming. Can you see it on the back screen? Yeah,